All right, so that was negative feedback. Now I want to talk about positive feedback. Okay, so we saw that in a negative feedback loop, we counteract the initial stimulus. In a positive feedback loop, our response is going to reinforce the initial stimulus. Okay, and this is not a homeostatic mechanism. Okay, so basically, in this diagram, if we look at this diagram, we have the initial stimulus and our response is to increase that initial stimulus, okay? So we're just gonna feed on ourselves and keep increasing that initial stimulus, okay? Because the feedback cycle kind of reinforces itself, okay, we need an outside factor to shut off the positive feedback loop, okay? So I'm going to have you take a moment now to answer this question. What would a positive feedback loop look like in the aquarium example? Okay, so take a moment, hit the pause button, answer this question. So go ahead. Okay, so we will come back to this question and discuss it in class. In the meantime, we will move on to this example of positive feedback, which is the example of uterine contractions during childbirth. Okay, so I'm going to start by just sort of orienting you to this slide. Right, so what we're looking at is a pregnant woman lying down on her back. So you can see her spine right here. Okay, here is the baby that is soon to be born. Okay, the baby, I guess, fetus, is surrounded by the uterus. So that's this layer of muscular tissue and other tissue that's around the baby. Okay. And our goal, because we're trying to give birth to this child, is to get this baby out of here and in this direction, right? So we want the baby to come over here. Okay. The gateway between the baby and the outside world is this part of the uterus, which is called the cervix. Okay, so there's like this little hole here. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to make that hole bigger so that the baby can go through and through the vagina to the outside world. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens with uterine contractions during childbirth. Okay, first of all, labor is initiated when the baby drops in the uterus, right? So the woman, she's pregnant, she has the baby, actually, I guess it's the fetus, in her uterus. When it's time, the baby drops, it moves more in this direction, okay? More towards the cervix, okay? So that's what starts labor, okay? Once that starts, that dropping of the baby towards the cervix causes the cervix to stretch, okay? So we have cervical stretch happening. When the cervix stretches, that stimulates the production of a hormone called oxytocin, okay? Oxytocin then causes the uterine wall to contract, okay? So we've released this hormone. That hormone is going to act on this wall right here, the uterine wall, okay? The muscles there are going to contract. When they contract, that is going to push the baby more towards the cervix, right? So that's what's shown here, push baby against cervix, okay? When the baby gets pushed against the cervix, we come back here to cervical stretch, right? So we're gonna stretch the cervix some more, and that is going to set off another round of these same events, okay? So that's a positive feedback loop, right? So what we've done is we've stretched the cervix, we've set off this series of events that causes the cervix to stretch more, okay? And this positive feedback loop is just going to continue on and on and on, right? So I've gone through childbirth 3 times. It is a long process, okay? So this happens over and over and over again. Positive feedback cervical stretch, oxytocin release, uterine contractions, pushing the baby over and over and over again until finally our outside factor that is going to cause this positive feedback loop to stop is the baby gets delivered, right? So once the baby's delivered, you're not going to have cervical stretch anymore. That then is going to stop this positive feedback loop from continuing, okay? All right, so that wraps up this discussion of negative and positive feedback loops. These are our learning goals. This is the vocabulary for this portion. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.